Okay, so hi, I'm Kirill. I am a geochemist. I'm currently finishing my PhD in Germany in Bavarian Geo Institute, and I've been collecting since I was 10 years old. This all led me to some quite exotic localities, especially around former USSR. Well, and about one of those trips that happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago actually already, I'll be talking today. Surprisingly, this material never went anywhere, and since then a lot changed. Like the computer screen default ratio changed from 4:3 to 16:9, and that's why some pictures look a bit weird. Otherwise, it aged quite well. Another thing we did after this trip is we analyzed really every single variety of Malkhan tourmalines that we were able to find. It resulted in some fun outcomes, which for a normal collector allow almost to determine the mineral species just by the color of the thing that you hold in hand. So the core part of this talk is a visual guide to Russian tourmaline varieties. Okay, let's start. Malkhan tourmaline deposit is located in Siberia. Siberia is an extremely huge region, but the exact location is a little bit west from Lake Baikal. It is 200 kilometers away from Trans Siberian, rather close to Russia-Mongolia border, and it is a really remote rural place. The Malkhan Pegmatite deposit is named after the Malkhan Ridge, a small mountain chain that is located there. But in general, it all looks like this. Basically some hills with forests that burn down every, few years thanks to climate change. I visited this in 2015 while gathering material for my bachelor thesis. Malkhan tourmaline deposit was known to geologists since 1930s, but at this time it was not known as a tourmaline deposit. It was known as a prospective tantalum niobium ore deposit. Some geological exploration was happening in the area, but surprisingly, geologists weren't finding anything except for the black schorl. In around 1980s, a party doing exploration for uranium occasionally stumbled upon mineral with some really nice red-colored tourmalines. They failed to find the actual uranium deposit, but they found what is now known as a single Russian active tourmaline deposit. In 1980 was a discovery of the Oreshne vein. The vein that is not mined right now actively. So from 83 to 87, there was an active exploration phase. All other pegmatite bodies were mapped, and like those really nice, spectacularly beautiful samples that you can see here were collected. Those are now in the collection of the Firstman Mineralogical Museum in Moscow. I used to work there as a guide for a while, long time ago. And yeah, you can see that there's no scale here, but those are actually huge specimens above several kilos each. In 1991, USSR falls apart and commercial mining starts as a rather sad and depressive region with almost no current production except for the forest and cedar nuts. People tried to make money out of this deposit, and it was extremely successful. It was functioning very well. And since then, the most productive part of this deposit is active. Basically, it's called the central ore body concentration, and it includes Mokhovaya, Oreshne, Sosetka, Oktyabrskaya, and Danburitova veins, which, you can see the translation here, are actually your common-sounding forest names: Mossy, Nutty, Neighbor, October, Danburite. And here you can see that how the mining happens. Parts of the overlaying granite are blasted off, and then the pegmatite body itself is cleared and then mined to its bottom, and the extraction of some nice samples, luckily not destroyed by the blast itself, happens. This is how the Sosetka vein looks like. Here you can see the part that has already been mined out, but still some part of the vein itself are visible in the wall of the quarry. This is a feldspar core. So it's a name for such part of a pegmatite body. And approximately at the center of this white region was the zone where the minerals with the big tourmalines, quartz, and feldspars were. But, well, nothing left. This is how Mokhovaya vein looks like. It's a side of the quarry from the top. You can see this white material on the side. This is mostly feldspar that comprises the pegmatite itself, and on the back is the granite that hosts the pegmatite body. So tourmalines there are extremely abundant. Tourmalines are actually rock-forming mineral at Malkhan, and they form all sorts of geological peculiarities, such as we're all used to intergrowth of quartz and feldspar, like pegmatitic structure. And here, a very common thing is not an intergrowth of feldspar and quartz, but an intergrowth of quartz and black tourmaline. And here you can see some samples. There are also really interesting zonal tourmalines in the rock. You can see on the right picture, the core is schorl, then there is this pegmatite zone, and then there is this elbite rim colored orange and pinkish, almost as you see in the samples in the collections. This is how schorls look like in thin section. They are in no way black. They are actually blue and green. Really nice if you cut the slice thin enough with quite nice pleochroism. And this is basically how much schorl is in this rock. A lot. All the green stuff is schorl. Here is a common central pegmatite part material. You can see that there are little minerals, little bugs where the minerals, like nice crystallized samples, grow. Here are some blue feather-like feldspars, elbite, called also clevelandite, I think that's the pronunciation, and some pink tourmalines in quartz. And this is just lying in the dumps of the Sosetka vein. There's also some little pinkish lepidolites on the side, but this is something that is not considered a worthy material to go into anyone's collection, of course. This is something that is a worthy material, and it is a view of one of the vugs. The photo is a little bit blurry because I took it while hanging from a cliff, quite literally. Those vugs are usually in the wall of the quarry, and the collection happens in quite well, in not exactly safest of the conditions. But you can see that there are a lot of quartz crystals, some feldspar surfaces, and what is quite remarkable is that you can't see a single tourmaline here. There is some pinkish hue in some places, but tourmalines themselves aren't visible. They are there, but they are covered by this white crust, which is mostly a combination of zeolites, mostly stilbite Ca, calcium, a variety of stilbite, and yeah, when you look at that, you just think like, okay, quartz. But if you look closer, you actually start noticing that, like at the center of this picture, there is a nice tourmaline crystal that is probably right now in somebody else's collection. And this vug actually had a really fun story. This was left in one of the quarry sites, and we arrived there in August, quite a while after the mining season started. And this vug was opened and unmined. When we asked what happened with it, the quarry staff told us a nice story from the previous winter. Apparently, local people are coming sometimes to this quarry to rob it. They plant some self-made gunpowder blasts into the side of the quarry and try to blow the minerals open. And this, of course, destroys everything that is inside of the mineral, and it's no more considered a nice gem material, which is the main part of the production. So this is one of those illegally scavenged minerals. And the local staff actually was thinking that there was nothing left in there. After we started digging, we extracted like a 10 centimeter rubellite sample and a ton of really nice ones that are all most of them were returned to the quarry owners, and the biggest one I believe, is in the collection of the professor that I went with. This nice tree stump with a little mineralogical exposition is something that you can collect at the mining dumps. They have a little spring where all of the mined material is washed and sorted, and there is quite a decently sized mining dump where quite acceptable specimens can be found sometimes. Like at this picture only, there are some nice quartz crystals, a lot of even not partial tourmaline crystals, some spessartine at the back, and this green thing at the right part of the picture is actually bismuth sulfide with bismuth carbonate. And on the left, there is a brief number of specimens that come from the Malkhan deposits that you can theoretically purchase right now and add to your collection. But I won't be talking about all of them in detail. I'll be talking about the more accessible ones, the ones that actually make it to any sort of market, because the production of this locality is extremely small. From the latest numbers I saw, it is around 200 kilos of material per year. A certain part of this material is gem grade and goes into faceting, and only a lot of this material is, let's say, consumed internally and redistributed between the Russian collectors, and only a small part purchased by some companies makes it to international market. It's actually not a big part. Like a lot of mineral species don't make it to international market. It's mostly like tourmalines from my observations. What we did at this locality is we collected all sorts of tourmalines. You can actually see that there are black tourmalines, there are pink tourmalines, there are yellow tourmalines, there are zone tourmalines, there's even some watermelon parts. And we prepared them for chemical analysis. We planted those into nice epoxy kegs and, well, spent quite a while trying to figure out what is the chemical composition of those fine-looking slices. Tourmaline is considered something really unpleasant to work with if you don't have a plethora of different machines that allow you to analyze all sorts of chemical things at the same time. Like calculating mineralogical formula of a tourmaline based only on electron microprobe analysis is considered a moveton, like a bad habit in the mineralogical community. And even though it is possible and with a decent precision, I believe that not a single normal scientific magazine will ever accept the data on tourmalines based solely on the electron microprobe. So when we talk about Malkhan tourmalines, that, as any tourmalines have quite a complicated chemistry, we find the following species in our samples: albite, fluoralbite, fluorolidocotite, schorl, fluorschorl. The ones that I never saw, but I bet that are there, and I will tell you why, are lidocotite and silizite. And this nice diagram on the left shows the evolution of the Y position in the tourmaline formula. Depending on time the certain part of the pegmatite formed, tourmalines found there have a very specific chemical composition that is represented by the occupancy of the Y site. And you can actually see that it starts from schorl, from completely black tourmaline that is mostly iron, and then manganese content increases and then goes to aluminum, lithium, and a little bit of iron at the end, which is quite remarkable. The quite remarkable detail is that sometimes when we see yellow tourmalines from Malkhan, they are called dravite. I have never seen a single magnesium end member, anything that can be called dravite in its chemical sense. Here is a fine example of one of the slices. It's actually an extremely common material, and I believe it's one of the two types that are usually found in the collection, changing its color from dark brown or black through yellow to pinkish. And here we can actually see remarkable and how remarkably simple is an answer to what type of tourmaline do you have in your collection. The best answer is I have a tourmaline because very, very commonly each crystal that you hold in hand is a combination of 2 or 3 or even 4 separate mineral species that all require rather precise analysis. But in general, for those colorful ones, the center is fluoralbite, and the pinkish cores are fluorolidicoatite, as in the first position, calcium starts to overweigh sodium. And a really fun detail is that those ones are in color scheme are extremely similar to the Moroccan find that happened not very long ago. And I'm actually quite sure that the chemistry should be similar based on like global pegmatite evolution trends. Yeah, and here on the right, you can see some SEM pictures showing nice zoning. Like whitish parts are zones with slightly heavier elements. Grayish parts are zones with slightly lighter elements. And yeah, you can see that in this whitish part on the bottom right picture, there is more iron and manganese. And in the grayish part, like on the rim, there is more lithium and aluminium, which are distinctively lighter and yeah, clearly visible. And there are all those little nice white specks of something extremely heavy. It's quite interesting, but we will come to this later. Here are your watermelon tourmalines. They don't get outside quite often because Russian collectors also love watermelon tourmalines. Also, those aren't a common find. There was a batch coming from the Mokhovaya vein a few years ago. Also, there was a batch from the vein called Zapadnaya or Western, but I've seen those in major collectors. Well, to my knowledge, not much of them made, for example, to Mindat. You can actually see that most of this is albite, but the pinkish and whitish zones turned out to be fluorolidicoatite. The other extremely common material are those bright pink siberite specimens, which are, well, rubellite. Siberite is this old semi-commercial name for that. I analyzed multiple samples of those, and it makes just no reason to show them on the screen because they are literally all the same. They're just pink. Like 80 to 90% of those pink samples are two mineral species, fluorolidicoatite and albite, or fluoralbite. So if you own a pink Russian tourmaline, there is a very big chance that it's those two. Here is the most remarkable little piece I sampled and studied. It is what somebody would consider a shoral. It is black. It was found in a small bog on the side of the Mokhovaya vein. I actually fished it out from the dump. It was not a fine collector's material. But not only this crystal is small, it's like 4 millimeters in cross-section or 5, something like that. Yeah, you can actually see the size. It has a remarkable structure with an early core and later grown rims, but it's also 4 tourmaline samples in one little piece. Perfect for systematic collectors, as it doesn't occupy any space in your box and represents the whole mineralogical variety of Malkhan tourmalines. Another mineral that comes with every single tourmaline specimen, Russian Malkhan Pegmatite field, is sessalite. This is, you can see its formula. It's actually known to chemists as a boric acid. And the concentration of boron in the fluids of this deposit was extremely high. And this fluid from which those tourmalines were growing from is now trapped inside little fluid inclusions in your samples. The concentration are so high in those inclusions that boric acid actually forms crystals. If you have a Russian tourmaline, you can add boric acid sessalite to your label, and you will be 100% right. I have never seen a single specimen that is devoid of this compound. Here's another thing that you can sample from the dump. That is like a kilo pink beryl surrounded by bismuth sulfides and bismuth carbonate. This was a bismuth-rich zone on Mokhovaya vein that produced a ton of samples that are still coming to the market and sold, well, from what I've seen, mostly internally. the pink beryls aren't exactly the rarest of the rock-forming minerals there. They are kind of rare in actual bugs, but in big, ugly chunks, they aren't. And here are some nice examples of pink beryl crystals from the museum collections. One from the first one museum collection, one from Sebastopol museum collection. I would like to say a few words about this nice bismuth mineralization. Those lumps are extremely heavy when you collect them, and there is even a reported very nice sample of native bismuth. I'm sorry, yeah, it's coming from Sosetka vein, not Nohovaya. Confusing. And the actual bismuth samples are very few. They are quite a prized possession. A fun detail about his is that they used to wash this bismuth-rich material at the same stream they were taking water from. And after a while, after this zone had been discovered on Sosetka vein, local workers started complaining on stomach problems. Well, you guess why. And after that, drinking from the mining stream was prohibited. Another nice mineral that from Malkhan that doesn't get enough love is dendrite. It's known to general public, but those are quite small dendrites, and the miners don't even always collect them. Those are like 1-2 centimeter sticks. Sometimes extremely successful vugs are found, like with this 17 centimeter crystal, but in general, those are small and sometimes opaque crystals, a few centimeters. Like on the left, you see one of those, and they have mineralogical peculiarity. Those dendrites have a lot of water in their structure, which is clearly seen if you do like a Raman analysis. But as you can see from its formula, there is no water in it. Such cases were described in mineralogical literature, I believe, from Myanmar, one, and I don't remember the other one. But yeah, there is a chance that one day we will see a new mineral species that is a dendrite type thing containing water. And here's a nice dendrite crystal inside the quartz that I studied that I just wanted to show because it's pretty. Another nice boron mineral is hamburgite that sometimes that covers some of the tourmaline samples that can be collected on Malkhan, but it suffers from the same problem. Crystals are quite small, and miners don't collect it as eagerly as they collect huge chunky tourmalines, and that's why even though it's not a very rare mineral there, it is not coming to the market. And that is something that a lot of the tourmalines Russian tourmalines that can be found in actual collections have, but not everyone knows about it. Those are microlite and pyrochlore group minerals that occur as solid inclusions inside the crystals. And as they quite often contain uranium and thorium in quite, respectable amounts, they create those opaque zones around them. And if you look at your tourmaline quartz closely, you can actually see that there is like a dark zone that hosts a little tiny crystal. So in one of those nicely colored tourmalines, we found a lot of such crystals. They are pretty small, around like 50 microns normally, sometimes 100. They are also really good samples of those minerals in collections and in mineralogical literature about this locality, but I will just talk about what I worked with. And you can actually see that those grains are not a single mineral species. Also, those are solid solutions. And for example, here is a little table of chemical analysis, and you see that there is niobium dominant variety, there is tantalum dominant variety, like one is microlite, one is pyrochlore. There are also a lot of such grains in different samples, some of them being pyrochlores, some of them being microlites. And no, unfortunately, it's impossible to determine which type is this exactly without a very precise analysis and a lot of those analyses. So you can't visually say what do you have in your sample in the collection without consulting the specialists. And a nice detail is that you see they have around 8% of uranium. So, well, they failed to find uranium deposit, but uranium is still there. Spessartine is a nice orange garnet, yet the samples, like really good-looking samples of spessartine are known from Malkhan, but there is only a handful of those. Usually it's present there as a rock-forming mineral. Free growth crystals are rather rare, and only if you need to hunt for those to have them. But they have a neat carrot orange color. So there is a bunch of useful sources that have way more information about different minerals as well as good-looking samples from big collections. There is an issue of Mineralogical Almanac, or like Mineral Observer magazine, volume 13B, that is fully dedicated to Malkhan deposit. And there is a more, an easier to find because it's in the open access article by Jindřich Kunitsky. It's, as far as I remember, head of the geological department from the University of Brno in Czech Republic, and he visits this locality quite often. And this article in the Mineralogical Record is, I believe, the most accurate report on the 2019-2020 state of the art. And of course, there's a number of actual scientific articles. It's a Mineralogical Record. It's like semi-scientific, even though written by scientists. There's a number of scientific articles dedicated to the Malkhan mineralogy. So if you have anything specific or peculiar, like one of those microlites pyrochlores, you can Google those second names and something useful will come out. And this study was performed in Moscow State University while I was doing my bachelor thesis under the supervision of Professor of Volcanology, Dr. Plechov, who actually until a few weeks ago used to be director of First Mineralogical Museum in Moscow. Yeah, here is this nice professor and museum director as a scale on the Sasyatka pegmatite body. Thank you for your attention and joining in. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer those.